2020 Incoterms brought to you by your team at ICAT Logistics Detroit. Understanding Incoterms is a vital part of international trade. When exporting products overseas, you must agree to sell your goods based on 11 Incoterms. Incoterms is short for International Commercial Terms, which are published by the International Chamber of Commerce and relate to international commercial law. They're accepted by governments and legal authorities around the world. Put simply, Incoterms are the selling terms the buyer and seller of goods both agree to before shipping the goods. Incoterms clearly states which tasks, costs, and risks are associated with the buyer and which are associated with the seller. The Incoterms states when the seller's costs and risks are transferred on to the buyer. We've put together this simple chart to display Incoterms in an easy-to-understand format. At the top is the exporter or the seller of the goods, beginning at the seller's location. As you move along to the right, the products leave the warehouse, get loaded on board a vessel or aircraft at the port of export, get shipped through to the port of destination, get customs cleared, and then delivered further through to the buyer's location. Along the way, there's a set of Incoterms to establish which risks and costs are agreed to be paid by the seller and which are to be transferred to the buyer. On the left are the different types of Incoterms, beginning from top to bottom. The first Incoterm, EXW, which means EX Works or EX Warehouse. If the buyer and seller agree to sell goods on EX Work terms, then the seller's obligation is very simple. The seller will only cover the cost of the goods EX Warehouse. So that means the seller will manufacture the goods, have them packaged, and ready for collection from their warehouse. From then on, all additional costs and risks involved in transport away from the warehouse is covered by the buyer. Moving further along the supply chain, there are FCA, FAS, and FOB Incoterms. These three terms are quite similar, but the most popular Incoterm used is FOB, free on board. When FOB terms are agreed upon, then the seller's obligation is to supply the goods and to pay for all additional charges to get the goods loaded on the vessel for export. So the seller will cover all loading charges, inland freight charges to the port, origin port handling charges, export customs clearance, and origin forwarder fees. As soon as the goods are loaded on board the vessel, all further associated costs and risks are transferred onto the buyer. The buyer will pay for sea freight and all charges thereafter. The buyer nominates the freight forwarder for transportation. If the seller agrees to pay for the sea freight, then they can choose to sell the goods on CFR, CIF, CPT, or CIP Incoterms. These are all quite similar terms. CFR and CPT are very similar, where the seller will agree to pay for the sea freight to ship the goods to the port of destination. If they agree to sell on CIF or CIP terms, then the seller will agree to pay the sea freight and the marine insurance cost to ship the goods to the port of destination. Moving further along, the seller can also agree to pay for the local charges associated at the port of destination, including port charges, import customs clearance, local import duties, and taxes payable on the goods to import. It is common for a seller to ship on DAP. With DAP, the seller agrees to transport to the buyer's door. However, the customs clearance, import duty, and taxes are the responsibility of the buyer. DPU terms are new for 2020 and take the place of DAT. DPU means delivered at placed unloaded. The seller agrees to provide the means of unloading the truck at the destination. A rigging crew or forklift and operator can be contracted by seller to perform these tasks. In the case of a container, this could mean providing additional labor as well as a forklift and pallet jack for moving goods within the container. Add to that potential insurance and workplace safety issues when the labor and equipment are not provided by the buyer to operate within their premises, makes this term one of the less commonly used. DDP is also not common due to the fact that the seller is covering all costs, including paying the customs clearance, import duty, and tax on the goods. For example, think of going grocery shopping and at the checkout insisting the store cover your sales tax. And you can imagine why this term isn't often used. If you have any detailed questions relating to Incoterms, you should always contact the team at ICAT Logistics. To export your shipment overseas, you will need to provide us with your detailed shipping documentation that will include the Incoterms you have agreed to sell the goods.